What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with another Look Ahead podcast, and I am ecstatic to be joined by now a reoccurring guest who was on last year for the Chicago Bulls Look Ahead, Jason Patt. You should follow him on Twitter at Bulls_J. That's at BULLS_J, JAY. He is an editor for Clutch Points, and he contributes to Bulls Blogger, Forbes, and he's the co-host of the Cash Considerations podcast with Ricky O'Donnell. Fantastic job those two guys do over there. Jason, how the heck are you?
I'm doing great. Media day. I guess there were some media days over the weekend, but most media day was Bulls media day today. Always brings some optimism, kind of with the Bulls because of what is happening with them and Lonzo Ball, but always try to talk yourself into some optimism and fun at media day before a new season.
Media day optimism just runs more and more rampant each year, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the Lonzo Ball stuff, which we will talk about, of course, has been hanging over the Bulls for a while. Trying to talk myself getting back into the Bulls, and it's always just fun to have them back. So media day around the league also just obviously always fun to see all the goofiness going on. And there's plenty of it, plenty of hijinks, delusions of grandeur from teams, and with some of the storylines around the league. Always fun to see what's going on. Not just for the Bulls, but for everywhere else too.
Yeah, the Bulls and the Sixers, ironically, had one of the least drratic media days.
Yeah, it was mostly pretty chill for the Bulls, so that's I guess good. Like I said, besides the Lonzo stuff, but we'll see how things go.
Believe it or not, we will get to the Lonzo stuff.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask you, and I always start here, is do you have just any like lingering impressions or thoughts from the offseason overall? Were you one of the people who were annoyed that they didn't spend their full MLE, or was it more of a situation of, well, who did you even want them to spend it on? And just what do you think about what they did, what they didn't do, anything that you're just harping on leading into this season?
Yeah, I mean, definitely underwhelming offseason. Absolutely annoyed. If you ever listen to Cash Considerations, me and Ricky enjoy pounding Jerry Reinsdorf and Bulls ownership for not using every avenue at their every avenue they have to spend and go into the luxury tax, because they've paid the luxury tax like once or twice in the last 20 some years or whatever. And I know if you've watched The Last Dance too, going back to the dynasty, and like they talked about the haggling with like Scottie Pippen and all that good stuff. Obviously this is it's a historic thing with the Bulls and the Jerry Reinsdorf Bulls. So definitely very annoying that that they did not use that full mid-level. You can say that they theoretically were going to use the full mid-level by trying to split it between Andre Drummond and Danilo Gallinari. Gallinari went to the Celtics, tore his ACL. Whatever, they didn't do it. It seemed like the Celtics were always going to be the front runner there. Gallinari spoke very highly. They're also the defending Eastern Conference champs. And then after that, they just didn't really use it. They used a little more. They used part of it on Drummond instead of just using the minimum, which bizarre. And then they had whatever left over, and they just haven't used it. Because they missed out on Gallinari, and they just didn't get anybody else. You could argue maybe there was no one else worthwhile. I know one of the popular names was like Isaiah Hartenstein went to the Knicks. Instead of like whatever, use the minimum on Drummond, maybe you actually use it like the full thing or more of it. I think Hartenstein get like $8 million a year from the Knicks, something like that.
Yeah,
like why not match that or give more of that, and then you use the minimum to sign somewhere else? Was they ended up just using the minimum to sign Goran Dragic, which was weird at the time. Maybe not quite as weird with the Lonzo Ball injury, but like Goran Dragic is not replicating what Lonzo Ball is bringing to the table or all those things. But Goran Dragic sounded like they wanted him last year. At media day, they talked about this today. He's got a connection to Arturas Karnisovas. Seems like a guy that just the front office really liked. They brought him in. We'll see how much he has left. But an offseason of basically bringing back the same team, adding Andre Drummond and Goran Dragic is not too exciting. Bringing back Zach LaVine, great, giving him the max. You can argue he's overpaid, whatever. They needed to do it. You got to re-sign your all-star players. They did it. And then re-signing Derek Jones Jr. was very bizarre. Nice player in a vacuum, but given the roster construction, the lack of shooting on the roster, didn't really make sense to bring him back when they have other guys like Javonte Green who are kind of similar. So overall, and they drafted Dalen Terry in the first round. Overall, just underwhelming. Not going into the tax, not doing all that spending, even though they were able to give whatever they re-signed Zach. which was pretty much a no-brainer. Like there was some rumors out there that, oh, maybe Zach is going to shop around. Oh, maybe he like wasn't thrilled with DeRozan like taking his spot. I think that was all just like leverage clutch BS. He was always coming back, it seemed like. But the additions, they're banking on continuity was like the buzzword all offseason and coming into media today. So underwhelming to say the least, but we'll see.
I mean, you just relayed a lot in there.
Yeah.
And I think I probably agree with everything you said. The only thing I'm just like the Danilo Gallinari stuff with the mid-level, at least that was in the ether. And you could argue, I think, as you just mentioned, that they sort of dodged catastrophe there with his ACL injury. I still want to know, and I don't mean to list this guy for every team, but I want to know why TJ Warren was going to Brooklyn on the minimum. Like, are his medicals that fucked up? Or because if I've said this about the Bucks, I would have said it about the Bulls. I would have thrown him more money than that just to take the 1 year flyer on the player that TJ Warren could technically be.
Yeah, Warren was a guy I know Bulls fans are talking about. I think we brought him up talking about it. It seems like, because I think I saw today when he did his media day thing that like he's still like not cleared to play. That he's like, I think he's able to do, he might be able to do some stuff, but like he's not like game ready. And I mean, he hasn't played in what, 2 or 3 years now. So it just seemed like, yeah, like his foot, I think it's his foot or whatever, just like it's not, there's just major concerns there. So at the minimum, it's like, whatever. If he doesn't work out, you cut him, it's fine.
Right.
You worry about giving him a little more than that, but like, if you give him a little more than that, it's like, whatever. It might be worth a gamble, especially with a team like the Bulls that could use some outside shooting, some just extra scoring off the bench. Definitely was a guy I was interested in, but it just really does seem like the medicals there were crap. And that's just taking a chance on him. But I mean, I would have been fine, even with the crap medicals. Like, I would have been totally fine signing him just to add that little extra scoring shooting punch that the Bulls clearly. And that's why like, the Gallinari stuff, I did not love the idea of like giving Gallo. I mean, what do you end up getting? 6-7 million a year? Like, I didn't love it. And like, I wouldn't have loved like giving him the full mid level just because, I mean, he's older, he's on the decline, he's had the injury problems, and of course he tears his ACL. But I mean, he at least would have, I guess, helped a clear need that the Bulls do have because they have a major lack of shooting on the roster, especially with Lonzo out. So at least he would have done that. So I don't know. It was. I do understand some people to an extent saying like, well, who could you have really signed? Who would have really made much of a difference? And like, ultimately, yes, like these guys on the margins wouldn't have made a difference between the Bulls being like a championship contender and not this season. But like the margins do matter. And when you add stuff up like that, it also helps with like whatever trade pieces and stuff like that, just for salary purposes as well. And that almost just kind of made me mad. Like just having like Drummond and Dragic have like no trade value. Like if they would have had a guy at like 8 or 9 million, like I mentioned Hardenstein again, like you have a young player on an $8 million a year contract. That's at least like a good trade chip. But like what they did, they added just some like veteran okay guys. Like they're better than some of the bums that were on the end of the Bulls roster last year, but that's a very low bar. So it's like, just again, underwhelming, not very exciting stuff.
So you look back at last season, and I was surprised. I guess not surprised because we watched it in real time, but like they were atop the East for a really, really, really long time. And so I'm wondering,
games.
Yeah, and you also just go back, and there was clearly you could break down their season probably into like 8 or 9 different segments. But I look at like the first time Lonzo Ball left the lineup, it was just after Christmas and health and safety protocols. They're 8th in defense. Everything's humming. Then for the rest of the year after that, he came back for like a hot minute and then was out again with injuries. They were 27th in defense after that. How much stock do you subscribe to how good the Bulls were for a large chunk of last year and at, I guess, close to full strength because it felt like they were never really truly at full strength?
Right. Yeah. So I probably talked myself into being better than they actually were at the start of last year. They were 39-21 through 60 games. That was top of the East. DeMar and his clutch play absolutely probably helped them like just luck wise. I mean, he had 2 straight game winners that were ridiculous. The game winning 3-pointers he hit on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, ridiculous shots, low percentage that usually won't go in. That's a couple right there. He was the best clutch player in the NBA last year. For basically, it was him and Joel Embiid, like right up there with the most clutch points. His efficiency in the clutch, ridiculous. So like, I think that helped luck wise, gave them a few more wins than maybe they should have had. If you look at their net rating when they were 39-21, like it wasn't they were like a dominant like +6, +7. I'm pretty sure they were like +3 or +4 maybe at that point. I don't remember exactly, but they weren't like a dominant 39-21. So they probably weren't quite as good as maybe we were talking. I was hyping myself into them being. They were still a dang good team though, and like you're right about like the health stuff. They were never really that healthy. Their best lineup, their closing lineup, Lonzo, Alex Caruso, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Nikola Vucevic played under 100 minutes last year. They had a net rating of something like, I think it was like 12 or 13. They were elite defensively. They were good enough offensively, and probably had some more upside. They never had Patrick Williams, or they basically didn't have Patrick Williams last year. So like they were a dang good team. Except maybe not title contender, but like if healthy, like maybe they actually could have like finished 4th or 5th, and maybe they win a series, and maybe that's how it plays out. But then the back quarter of the season, or the last 20 games, when they don't have Lonzo, when Zach's got his knee problem, Caruso obviously had the Dragic, the Grayson Allen thing, which put him out for a while. He did come back, but he was never quite himself, even when he came back, and he had some other injury stuff too. Take those two guys out at their full strength. Lonzo and Caruso kind of just made that defense craters, but then the offense also fell off a cliff. Zach wasn't quite himself. No Lonzo's 3-point shooting. I think they were last in 3-point rate for that like last half of the season, and their offense just totally fell off a cliff. So they were bad on both ends, and they're getting their ass beat just every single night. 20-point blowouts with a really tough schedule. They played like the Celtics a few times. I think they played the Heat a few times. Some other really good teams, and they just couldn't hang. And like if they were fully healthy, like would they have been better? Like I don't think they would have gotten blown out like they had, but like would they have beaten those teams a lot more? Would they have? Maybe you get them to like 50 wins or something like that, but would they have been the number? Would they still have ended up top in the East if they were mostly healthy? I don't know about that. I think they probably still come back to the pack, but it was just a strange season because of all the weird injury stuff, 2 key players, and then just like with that back portion of the schedule being very difficult, their closing schedule it made them look way worse. So like, were they that bad that last part of the year and then into the playoffs when they won 1 game and then they got smoked in the last 3 games against the Bucks? They're not that bad. Were they as good as they were at the start of the year? Probably not. Probably more a little back. So now you come back into this season and it's like, so what exactly are they? And then they don't have Lonzo, and it's like they're probably okay to decent. And a lot of question marks still.
This is skipping ahead on the rundown I sent you, but you mentioned DeMar DeRozan's clutch play, and this is just wild. So like Unpredictable has a clutch win probability added metric, and it's just like none of these metrics are end all be alls, but DeMar DeRozan ranked 1st in the NBA in clutch win probability added at 5.84. Second place was Nikola Jokic at 2.63. And so he more than doubles up in second place. Is there like a concern at all about how this team can forget? And I'm delaying the Lonzo stuff way too much at this point, but is there like a concern? What happens if just DeMar DeRozan isn't all NBA caliber this year? He is 33. And like, I'm not going to predict it. His game should age well. I tend to think that over the past few seasons, he's just become incredibly underrated, especially as like dating back to his last couple of years with the Raptors. He might be like the single most underrated pick and roll passer in basketball. And that's not hyperbole. So just like, is that something you've thought about at all? Or am I just jumping way too hard?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, and if you look at his like Spurs numbers, like his scoring wasn't as high, but like his assists went up, and like he was still like ridiculously efficient shooting wise. Like he was just playing with mediocre Spurs teams and no one cared about them. I am concerned about the clutch stuff coming down. Even like a little regression there, I think probably means a few less wins. Like again, the number you just pointed out, I mentioned some of like the clutch stuff. I think he was like 54% shooting in the clutch, and like that's a heavy diet of contested, difficult mid-range, the hardest shots in basketball. Like, I know, and like again, his game should age well because he is a master at his craft. His footwork, he still gets guys to bite on all his pump fakes and all that kind of stuff. So like that stuff should stick. But even if that like 55% shooting comes down to like 49 or 50% in the clutch, here and there, those few points could mean a few less wins. And like that could affect the standings for sure. So that's absolutely something I've thought about, because I mean, he just had the best season of his career, probably at age 32, 33. Like, can he do that again? That's a lot to ask, even if he still is really good. I know he had some great quotes today about people doubting him and talking about how it's free energy. And DeMar is absolutely awesome to listen to. Just so many hilarious analogies too. And like, it was great. But like, again, it is just a lot to ask of him to do that again. So if he does regress, you just have to hope Zach being healthy, that maybe he can help step up in the clutch. Other guys, Patrick Williams, you need a leap from him. I mean, you still have Nikola Vucevic. I know he was point of contention last year, but I mean, still a pretty good player. So if DeMar does fall back, you just have to hope the other guys can help pick up the slack at least a little bit.
So Lonzo Ball,
Yeah.
how concerning is this just left knee issue in general? And then how much does it impact the Bulls to start the season? Because you're without Lonzo, who I think is just, he's mission critical to their shooting, as you mentioned. I think he's really important to the way that they were defending early on last season. And then also, this is just something I stumbled into today. Positive residual has the Bulls having one of the 10 toughest schedules in the league through the month of November, which is just like under Lonzo's current timeline. Like he's probably going to miss like all of October and November would be the assumption, or at least close to it. And so like how big of an issue is this?
Oh, it's awful. Like I said, it's hanging over this team. It's been hanging over the team all offseason. I mean, his last game he played was January 14th. And then he had knee meniscus surgery 2 weeks later. 6 to 8 weeks was what it was supposed to be. And then like it just kept getting pushed back and back and back. And then they ruled him out for the season, playoffs, and all that stuff. And then we keep going into the summer, and it's like, oh, he's progressing, but like maybe not as fast as he hoped. Like AK at Summer League was like, literally just came out and said, it's not going as fast as we would like. And it's just like alarm bell is ringing. At that point, it's just like, this dude's going to need another surgery, isn't he? Sure enough, last week they announced that he's going to go under the knife again. And that I think Wednesday it's going to happen. 4 to 6 weeks reevaluation. And that's not like he's going to be ready in 4 to 6 weeks. AK today says, we don't know. We don't have a timeline on it. We don't know when he's going to be ready. So like, I am not expecting him back, or at least back to like himself until 2023. Maybe that's even generous just because of how long he's been out. Obviously super unfortunate. It's brutal because he does mean so much to them. 3-point shooting. He took 7 or 8 threes a game last year at 42%. Bulls have had a low 3-point rate with him. Without him, as I mentioned, they were like worse in the league, and they did not do anything to address that really this offseason. Defense, as we mentioned, him and Caruso basically were running that thing. They were the engines of that defense, top 10 defense to start last season. Just the perimeter, the ball pressure, team defense, all that stuff. Passing, he's the best passer on the team. The transition stuff, their transition offense was, I believe, one of the better ranking ones in the NBA when he was out there. Once he's not out there, like the look ahead passes, all that kind of stuff, just went into the tubes. And just like aesthetically, like him just leading the break and getting them out in transition just helped make them just way more fun as well. So like you lose all of that. He's the glue of the team, one of their only legit two-way players. That's how you end up being just way worse without him on the court. So it is a huge problem. And that beginning schedule, they have a bunch of back-to-backs like really early, which is tough. As you mentioned, it's a very difficult schedule at the start. So it's not great. So like these other guys, other guys are going to have to step it up. I mean, they still have some talent there. You still have 2 all-star scorers with DeMar and Zach. Vuce is still a decent center. And then you have to hope that internal development, Patrick Williams, Dosunmu, and we'll see who starts in place of Alonzo. Billy Donovan did not say who it would be. Would it be Io? Would it be Caruso? Would it be Dragic? I don't know. I kind of hope. I would hope for Io or Caruso. Like Dragic, I know maybe he's the veteran. AK likes him, but I just don't know how much he has left. And I'd rather give Io had a really nice rookie season. I'd rather give him a chance. He started a ton of games last year anyways. Built some nice chemistry with the guys. Or Caruso, because he's just one of your 4 or 5 most impactful players. So just start one of those guys. But we'll see. Either way, I mean, the Bulls don't have anybody who can replicate everything that Lonzo brings. Such a unique player, one of the best role players in the NBA. Probably won't ever be an all-star, but he just does so many things to help bring it all together for them. That's why his absence was so glaring last year, and it's going to be pretty glaring to start the season as well. And they're just going to have to hope that he's back at some point.
Patrick Williams, you mentioned him. The Bulls, I think you probably have said they're really high on him, but implicitly, the lack of like trade rumors tied to him this summer, that just implies that they're super high on him. Yeah. Is he like, aside, I guess, from Lonzo's health, is he now the biggest swing piece on this team aside from that? And then aside from his own availability, which has been an issue for him, what is like the biggest thing the Bulls need to see from him this year?
First of all, biggest swing piece besides Lonzo, I would say absolutely yes. Clearly, as you mentioned, like they have a lot of faith in him. He was this front office's first high lottery pick, number 4. And with these trade rumors, like there was stuff at the last deadline, like, oh, should the Bulls trade Patrick Williams for like Jeremy Grant, Harrison Barnes? Seems like that is not something they ever entertained. Like we talked about it, we thought like, hey, maybe that might be a decent idea when the Bulls were top of the East. Like Patrick Williams isn't playing, like maybe they can go at a proven form, maybe they will be a contender. Doesn't sound like, based on the reporting out there, that was something they ever considered, like Jeremy Grant or anything like that. And then this offseason was the Rudy Gobert stuff, and like it seemed like they weren't really sure or in on including him for Rudy Gobert. Honest, it did not come down to Patrick Williams. I don't think the Bulls did not have the draft picks to match that kind of capital the Timberwolves gave up, and I don't think they would have. I probably wouldn't have wanted to do that either. But when it seemed like the Bulls might have had a chance, and like there were some rumblings that, oh, the Bulls like might be the front runner right now, if they're willing to put like Patrick Williams on the table, and like it doesn't seem like they are, but like maybe they'll ultimately do it. The fact that they were like waffling on it clearly means that they're still very high on him, even though last season was basically a lost season for him, because he had the wrist injury 5 games in, and his rookie season he showed some nice things, but like I mean he certainly was no Scotty Barnes. I mean Scotty Barnes is like the easy comp, both Florida State guys, kind of similar players as versatile forwards. So like Patrick Williams' rookie season was nowhere near Scotty Barnes' rookie season. So like just how good is Patrick Williams? And a lot of it might come down to just like the mentality, and that seems to be a big question mark. Does he have the cliche? Does he have that dog in him? And I do not know. He has shown too much hesitation when he plays offensively, at least. Like he certainly has some of the skill set and like the NBA body to be like a really good player. Does he have that in him where he is like he will go get it, where he will put his imprint on games? But just too often he floats around in the background, was invisible. And like for such a young guy, I get it. And like last season, when you miss most of the year, like coming back into a playoff race, that's tough. I mean, I don't want to like be too harsh on the guy for like not doing much last season, because he was hurt most of it. He had some moments when he came back. He started to get like the last couple of games against Milwaukee, people point to, he had like I think a couple 20-point games. They were in blowouts. Like, I don't know how much to really take from those, but like he's had his moments and he looks like he could be a good player because he's 6'7", 6'8". He's got like huge hands, huge thighs. I mean, like people like to make the Kawhi stuff just because he kind of looks like him and like kind of moves on him. I don't want to make any Kawhi comparisons because those are ridiculous because how good Kawhi is. But like, if you like squint and like kind of watch him play, it's like you can kind of see like, oh yeah, like I can see why the most optimistic people ever would think maybe there's like a baby Kawhi in there. But like, so like for him on the court this year, he'll definitely be better. I'm pretty confident that. I know he's slimmed down a bit, just get in better shape. To develop his skill set, it'll be interesting to see just how they use him. He talked about how they have a different offense in place. Well, I'm really curious to see how that plays out. Because a lot of the times he's just been used as a floor spacer, and they'll need him to shoot threes. Like he can't be hesitant to shoot open threes. The Bulls need him to shoot open 3-pointers because of their lack of shooting. And he's been a good 3-point shooter in his career. He needs to do that. Would just also love to see him be just more aggressive, taking on more ball handling stuff. So I'm curious also to see like how Billy uses him like with different lineups. And because like there was a lot of stuff last year with like DeMar with like lead bench units, and it'd basically just be him doing his thing with like 4 guys standing around watching him. I'd love to see Patrick Williams get more like opportunities to like handle the ball and like run pick and roll against bench units, whether that's with DeMar or whether that's like maybe him and Zach doing that because DeMar's not as much of an off-ball player. I just love to see a little more Patrick Williams on-ball reps just to help develop him. I mentioned Scotty Barnes again. Scotty Barnes talking about how he's always been a point guard and he loves playing point guard. There was all this stuff about when Patrick Williams came out, like, oh, he like played point guard in high school and like he's got these ball skills. It's like I would sure love to see more of that as opposed to him just standing in the corner and shooting open threes. Even though that will still be just naturally a part of his game when you're playing with DeMar, Zach, and Vooch, and he's going to be a 4th or 5th option offensively. And then defensively, they're going to need him to be a stopper. I mean, he's one of the only wings on this team, only legitimate like 6'7", 6'8" guys, one of the only power forwards. So they're going to need him to be that guy who guards superstar wings. And he's taken on all these assignments already, hit or miss. And obviously for such a young guy,
he was good at it his rookie season. I remember
he had his moments like where he'd slow down. He'd get his stops on Giannis. He'd get his stops on LeBron. He took his beatings too. He took his poundings, but like he took on those battles. And you learn from it. You learn from that stuff, and you just hope that he keeps getting better and that he could be at some point be that defensive stopper on the wing that basically every really good team needs. So like, if you're looking at like stats and stuff like that, I think he averaged like 8 points a game like the last couple of years. Like you hope he adds maybe 5 to 7 to that and can be around like 13 to 15 points a game. Like maybe 15 is even too much, but like to see a bit more usage offensively, a bit more aggressive, and just like being willing to go just like do it. Because I mean, there are just moments where like he explodes and it comes out. It's like, where is this guy more often? But then other games where he's just hanging around the perimeter, just like not doing that much. He's just got to bring that mentality every night, both ends of the court. And I mean, there is a lot of pressure on him with this whole continuity thing. They're relying a lot on him to get a lot better and to make this leap. So there's pressure on him. And if like he doesn't, he'll be an easy scapegoat. Just like, well, this guy's a bust.
Right.
He's bad. And like that hurt that would, and if they then look to trade him, like obviously the value is probably down if he doesn't take that step in his third season. So there is a lot of pressure on him to get better and help this team. If he does make a leap and he is actually an impact guy, that just, I mean, that kind of changes the trajectory on the Bulls a bit and makes their future a bit more bright. Because I know some people with where they are now with the Lonzo stuff and like their core is a little aging with Vooch and DeMar and some of the other roster construction questions. It's like, well, where is this team actually going? And they're out all these draft picks. Patrick Williams being really good would at least help change that outlook at least a little bit.
This is just going to step on the toes of what you said, but there's like and Scotty Barnes was, I want to make it clear, is already better than Patrick Williams.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Even when Scotty Barnes is aggressive on offense, the processing speed of what he's doing can be kind of slow and overly methodical. When Patrick Williams last year decided to do things like dribble into jumpers or attack the basket, like there was a very like accelerated processing speed there that made me wonder, this guy could do more than float around the perimeter on offense. I just wonder, and this is what you talked about, this is why I'm just echoing you, I don't know if you have the room to experiment with him on this team. Maybe with Lonzo out, you do, but even then, I don't know. Like, you're a team with immediate aspirations. You're not going to say, hey, Patrick Williams, you're going to run second units and you're going to orchestrate like 5 or 6 pick and rolls a game or something.
Right. Yeah, that is the tough part because you're not in rebuild mode. You're trying to win now. But I think there still is some room to at least experiment a little bit in the regular season against those second units, maybe even against like bad teams or maybe in blowouts, stuff like that. You need to do something to develop him because you can't. This guy is theoretically a huge part of your future. So you need to. It's a tough balancing act between doing all you can to win now and developing Patrick Williams for whether it's to be one of your future stars or for a possible trade chip for the deadline or next offseason or whatever.
Nikola Vucevic did not have a good year last year. I would say it's fair to frame it that way.
Yep.
Was how much he struggled overblown at all? Like, let's just say he shot like for the year, but I know there was a time where he like was missing everything.
Yeah.
But let's just say he shot like 2 or 3 percentage points higher on 3-pointers. Are we even viewing his season as negatively? He still shot like 54% on twos. I still think he's very like, he's just this good through line passer where stuff can connect through him on offense. Are you concerned about like him leading into this season? What was actually the biggest problem aside from the outside shooting woes with him last year? And again, were those struggles just a little bit overblown?
So probably a little bit overblown. I think like easy scapegoat. I compared him recently to like the Carlos Boozer stuff when like Boozer was starting to like trend downhill for the Bulls. Like still pretty good, still productive. You look at his like final numbers and like, look, this guy's still a pretty good player, like doubles on the regular, pretty good passer. But then obviously like the defensive miscues can always look worse for those big guys who are slow footed. And it's like, just easy to be like pick and roll defense. That's on Vooch. And like, sometimes it is because he has those shortcomings, but like, and having Lonzo and Caruso out there early in the season helped mask some of that. And like Vooch is decent enough at like positioning and using his hands and being in the right spots where like, if you have stud perimeter defenders wreaking havoc and just like funneling to him, then he's fine. Obviously, if you don't have that and the point guards and guards just blowing up the perimeter defenders off the dribble, leaving Vooch on an island, then he's going to look bad. The problem with like his season overall, offensively at least, was just the inconsistency. And then he just had some like really bad games or like total clunkers against good teams where it's like, this guy looks totally overmatched. Like, so which makes you worried. It's like in games that matter, like in the playoffs, like, is this guy just going to get run off the court? He actually wasn't that bad against the Bucks. I'm pretty sure his numbers were like fine. his shooting numbers weren't great because he took I think 10 threes a game. He just
his volume was jacked up.
Yeah, because I mean the Bucks, as we know, they will let you shoot open threes. We saw them let Grant Williams shoot however many threes in that game 7, and he was able to make them. Vooch, they let him shoot open. They let basically the Bulls in general. I think we're shooting 50 threes. Talk about the Bulls 3-point rate being low last year. That Bucks series, they were taking open threes because it was all their awful shooters too, like Jared Jones Jr. and Javonte Green. And I mean, Vooch isn't an awful shooter, but he only made 31% on 9 or 10 threes a game. They were just letting Bulls bad shooters take open threes. It would be great to get Vooch back to 35-ish% around league average. The problem, of course, is when the Bulls traded for Vooch, they give up Wendell Carter, they gave up 2 first-round picks.
Wendell Carter Jr. looks like a stud.
Yeah, and Wendell had a really nice season. I think Wendell needed a fresh start. I don't know if it was ever going to happen from Chicago, but good player. Seems like he's going to develop into a really solid long-term player in the NBA. But it's clear that the Bulls gave up too much for Vooch. When they traded for him, he's in the midst of a 25-12 season, shooting 40-some% from 3. Remember, this was the non-fans COVID season. And if you look at his career 3-point percentage, huge outlier that season where he was over 40%. Every other season besides that, the season before that, I think he was at 36, 35, and I think even before that, it was 33. Okay, so get him up to 35, 36%, and things would look a bit better. But again, I think the inconsistency was an issue because the beginning of the year, even when the Bulls were going well, Vooch was just botching layups left and right, and it was just really frustrating to watch. He did, as you mentioned, bring up that 2-point percentage a lot as the season went on, but it just never really felt like he ever truly got into a huge groove. He had some really nice stretches if you go back and look at his game logs and stuff like that. He had a few nice stretches in months where he was averaging 20 and 10 and looked kind of like the all-star Vooch.
Mm-hmm.
But with the inconsistency and then when the defense fell apart towards the back half of the season, again, easy scapegoat for the man in the middle to look bad defensively when you have a bad defensive team. So it's so now looking ahead, it's can Vooch get that 3-point percentage up? He talked about how he thought he was focusing too much on 3-pointers last year. I don't really agree with that. He took 4.5 a game. That's about right. He took over 6 2 years ago. Was that, I think, 4.5 3 years ago? Around 4 or 5 I think the Bulls need him to take those shots because of, again, the lack of shooting and spacing on this roster. They need Vooch to take some threes. If you can just get that up again to around league average, 34, 35%. And I know that over a course of a long season, that's not even that many threes to go from 31 to 35. But I mean, here and there in the right spots, maybe that means a few more wins if you make those shots. So if you can get that back up, he's never going to be a big free throw guy. That's just never been his game. He's kind of a softie around the rim. So I don't think you can expect much more there. And then you just have to hope that, I guess, the defense holds up. With no Lonzo there, that hurts. You need Caruso there. Hopefully he stays healthy. So it's just a weird situation with Vooch. He's in his contract year. We've been talked a lot about trading him. Should the Bulls go? We talked the Gobert stuff, obviously. Then, should the Bulls go try Miles Turner? Do they just need a different look, and a more defensive presence when you have Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan as your 2 best players? But then Vooch, you mentioned the passing stuff. Vooch is a very good passer. Vooch is a very unique skill set for a center. In terms of being able to shoot decently well from the outside, in terms of being able to pass and be a high post hub of the offense. He's still very good at doing that. And he's still a decent low post scorer. But if you just look at it all together in terms of the low true shooting below at league average, the disappointing 3-point shooting doesn't get to the line. And then the defense being what it is, passable when you have the right guys around him, but damaging when he's not fixing mistakes. And it's is this the right guy at whatever he is? What is he, 31, 32 now? Another just kind of a weird spot entering a contract year. And I don't know if there were rumors about extension stuff. I would give him maybe a short-term team-friendly deal. I don't know if he has any reason to take anything like that. I'd be surprised if they sign him an extension. But so yeah, I'm not really sure what to expect out of Vooch this season, honestly. If he does what he does last year, it'll be frustrating. But I think that's really all you can expect as a third option playing with Zach and DeMar. He averaged 17 or 18 and 11 and 10, 3 or 4 assists a game. Get that 3-point percentage up and it looks a little better. And that's probably really all you can ask for at this point.
Yeah, hopefully I'll just be more comfortable. He was off the ball more last year than he was definitely used to in Orlando. Yeah. How do you feel about the center rotation overall now, though? I'm not an Andre Drummond guy, and and it's just so are we I guess the twofold question here, are the Bulls built to experiment up front then, where like Derek Jones Jr. or Patrick Williams play some five, or maybe they're the front court together? Or is this, you already mentioned his name, so this is not going to be, I can't throw it out now to make it think like I put like a ton of thought into this. I kind of felt like Chicago was a dark horse destination for like Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, like a mega package that would end up with those two. Like, is this something that the team looks to address via trade to diversify its five rotation during the middle of the season?
Yeah. First of all, with Drummond, I'm not a Drummond guy. I mean, he's productive still, and like I tell myself that like he's better than Tony Bradley. I think because like Tony Bradley can't catch a pass, and he's sometimes good at being very.
Tony Bradley might be better at defending in space, though.
Right? Yeah, he's good at being large because I think he's got like a 7'5" wingspan. And like there were times against like slow-footed big centers where like Tony Bradley would swat shots back in their face, but like giving you zero offensively because he just can't catch a ball or dribble a ball and do anything like that. And Drummond can do it, but then there's other times where like he tries to do stuff and it's just like absolutely ridiculous and it turns into awful turnovers. Like you don't want him doing too much of that. And like so with Vuce and Drummond, they're almost, obviously Drummond can't shoot threes, but like kind of similar in terms of just being slow-footed, like good rebounders, not great at protecting the rim. So like kind of similar there. Someone asked, I think Billy Donovan today, like, oh, would you ever see like playing Vooch and Drummond together? And I was like, if there are ever any times in like real minutes
was Kurt Rambis that ever happened, day?
Yeah. And I was like, that better not ever happen. Someone in my Twitter was like, the only time that will ever happen is if like you badly need a rebound, like on a free throw in like the last second, and like maybe you'll have them out on the court together. But like otherwise, those guys better not ever play together. So looking past that, they do have others. I mean, they still have Tony Bradley on the roster. Why? I don't know. Get him out of here. Sign somebody else. I mean, he's your third center, but like he's also just pretty similar in terms of just being a big, slow-footed guy. And then they have Marcus Simonovic as a center as well, who killed the G League last year and was a summer league standout. But I don't think he's an NBA player. And then they have like no power forwards. They have Patrick Williams, who I do think I would love to see them try some Patrick Williams at the 5. Billy Donovan did bring that up today. They did try Derek Jones Jr. at the 5 in small doses, which I think works. Well, he's got long arms. He can jump out of the gym. I know he's only like 6'5" and he's skinny. In certain matchups, you can get away with it for at least small doses. So I think they will try sometimes to play maybe smaller depending on matchups. But I mean, I think between Vooch and Drummond, those will probably be the two main centers. I mean, there will be injuries and stuff like that. But in terms of addressing it, I don't know. It was like Miles Turner has been on the trade block for what, 5 years now, like forever, basically.
Decades, maybe, yeah. Since he
and I know whatever his
name,
name, their GM came out and said, "Oh no, we're not trading him." But I mean, guys say anything, and guys get traded later. But I mean, literally, Miles Turner has been in trade. Like, I don't know how Miles Turner isn't on the Hornets yet, because I feel like the Hornets every season have been linked to Miles Turner. I guess it could depend on just like how things start, and if the season starts bad, like maybe they look to change things up with Vooch and the centers rotation. They try to make a trade like that. I'm not really sure what a trade would look like, what they would want to give up for someone like Miles Turner. But because like also Miles Turner, like the idea of him I feel like has always been better than the reality of him. Like he is obviously a great defender. I think he was a defensive player of the year candidate once, but like offensively, he seems to think he's better than he really is. Like also a good shooter, but doesn't do that much else offensively. So it's like, I get the idea of like wanting to just like change the look and bringing in Turner to be a defensive guy who can also shoot a little bit. Right. Not the best rebounder. He certainly is not as good as rebounding at Vooch, but like just changing the look up. Because as when you have a team that's your top 3 is Zach, DeMar, and Vooch, clearly, I mean, that's defensive issues there for your top 3 guys. And they signed Lonzo and Caruso to help make up for that, but Lonzo's not playing. So like maybe you just need to change it. Because I think last season there was a stat where I looked at like Vooch, DeMar, and Zach played I think like over 1,000 minutes together. I can't remember exactly how many it was. And their net rating was like even. So like whatever, taking all the other guys in and out of the lineup, those 3 guys as your 3 all-star level players played a lot of minutes together and they had like an even net rating. That's not great. So like there could come a point where it's like, we just need to change something here with these top guys. And maybe they do look for a Miles Turner or some maybe a more defensive presence, but I don't know. We'll see.
That's you saying that, and it made me look at it really quick because I didn't realize that. They played per cleaning the glass outside of garbage time. They played 24, about 2,500 possessions together, and their net rating was a -0.5.
Yeah.
That's like,
yep.
Which makes sense because of like, wow. That's just the story of the Bulls season. Just
yeah, and then obviously a lot of that kit was coming back from the hot start at the end of the year. But I mean, still, like, if you have those three guys and those theoretical all-star, I mean, they are all-star players, not theoretical. Vooch is more of a theoretical all-star at this point. Even without Lonzo and Caruso, you would hope you're paying those three guys a lot of money, like that they could at least be a little better than that altogether, even against really good teams. But they were just getting smoked nightly, and that brought back that overall net rating for the season to be right around mediocre. And the Bulls, by the end of the season, I think their net rating at the end of the season was negative or very close. So like after all that, after being in first 60 games in, that disastrous last quarter of the season put them into the negative. It's pretty crazy.
It's kind of apropos that I'm waiting this long to ask you about Zach LaVine, because re-signing him was the right move. It was never a question to me. No brainer. Good decision. And he's turned into like one of the 5 best off the dribble shooters in the league, I think, especially from beyond the arc. Is there just any concern though that like, oh, hey, this guy just had left knee surgery himself too?
I mean, he said he's feeling good. You hope that, I mean, he's had injury problems throughout his career.
Pretty bad. Imagine if that was like Zach LaVine just was like, nah, I'm not feeling great. No. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. I mean, last year was such a weird year for him. It was 2 years ago. Again, that I think the non-fan year, his like efficiency was off the charts. Last year, like his year started, he had the weird wrist thing or thumb. He had some hand injury that was like bugging him. Then he like started to really pick things up at one point in like December, July, or January. And then he has the knee thing for the last half of the season, and then he has the surgery. So now you hope that he is now fully past this stuff. You always worry a little bit about knee stuff and knee surgeries because this isn't his first one. He had the ACL tear back before the Bulls signed him. So it's not like this is his first rodeo with knee injuries. He's missed time throughout his career with some stuff like this. So always a little worry. But I'm going to be optimistic about Zach LaVine. I think he's going to have a really nice season, a big season, maybe even a little better than last year. I mean, he still had, even with like a injury-plagued kind of down year last year, it seemed like he was a little more quiet, especially that back half of the season again where he was playing through the knee injury. Never really seem like that explosive self where he would have the games where he'd hit 8 or 9 threes and go for like 40 plus points. And some of that's also DeMar DeRozan being there because he was the one scoring 40 points and like on 50% shooting, 8 straight games, whatever he did, that record he set. But Zach just never seemed quite himself the second half of the year. Just didn't have those consistent big games. I feel like we'll see hopefully at least a bit more of that this season, maybe get a scoring average up a little. And again, as we mentioned before with DeMar, hopefully make up for any possible regression that DeMar has. Will there be any other like big steps in like Zach's game? I don't know. This is year 7 or 8 for him now. Like, I don't know if he's got another like level to take as like a playmaker or defense. I think he has gotten better defensively. We saw when he played with the Olympic team and when he like buckles down and tries defensively, like he's okay. He's not great. He'll never be like a lockdown guy, but he's gotten better for sure. So like, I don't know if he has another level to his game where he can like ever become like a top 10 guy, but like, I think when healthy, I mean, he's been a couple time All-Star, borderline top 20 guy, one of the most efficient players in the game. As you mentioned, one of the best off the dribbles shooters. I mean, I would love to see him use him more off the ball in terms of catch and shoot stuff, on getting him open and with that kind of thing. I want him to, I was doing cash considerations earlier today. I was thinking like with Lonzo out and with this roster having no 3-point shooting, I'd love to see Zach like just start chucking threes, almost not quite like Steph. Like Steph takes 12 a game, 12, 13 a game.
So you want to see him take 7?
I would love to see Zach take 10 double-digit threes a game at this point to help just make up for some of that volume loss. Like I don't want him to settle too much, but like he's so good at it. I mean, he's consistently the last few years, 38, 39, 40% from 3, like get up 10 threes a game. When you can run plays for him to get threes, to get open. He can be a good off the ball player too. And when you have DeMar out there, like run stuff for Zach off ball and get him open threes, get him those open catch and shoot looks. I love to see Zach shoot 9, 10 3-pointers a game. And I think he's going to have a good season. It will be interesting to see, like, obviously now with expectations, he's a $200 million contract. This is the first $100 million contract that a Jerry Reinsdorf team has ever given out to Zach LaVine. Crazy factoid there. There's going to be some pressure on him, and I know fans will come down hard. So, like, if Zach misses a clutch shot or if Zach makes a bad decision in crunch time, fans will be like, oh, like we shouldn't have paid Zach LaVine that max contract. We should have traded him. Like, so I'm sure there'll be some of that stuff out there. But as you kind of mentioned, as I mentioned before, like it was a no-brainer to pay him. Like like if the Bulls were going to trade him, it would have been a couple years ago before signing Zach and DeMar, and then they just would have rebuilt again. And maybe in a few years, if this doesn't work out, maybe they do look at trading Zach again. But this offseason specifically, you had to pay him that contract. They did it. They didn't really haggle with him, which was nice to see. I talk about the Bulls being cheap. They actually did pay up for Zach, and he got like pretty much everything he wanted out of that contract. He got the player option, got some other, I think, stuff. I don't even think he had like any like non-guaranteed money in terms of like the injury protections or anything like that. So he's got the big contract now. Hopefully he can continue playing, because I mean, in Chicago, he's basically gotten better almost every year. Last year, notwithstanding, just was the injury stuff, but he earned that contract. He's one of the best scorers in the NBA, and hopefully he can have a pretty big season. I'm really looking forward to seeing him back at full health.
I'm going to loop these two things together, but where do you land on Coby White? And is Ayo Dosunmu officially more important to this team than Coby White? I think you could argue that, look, Coby White had like that molten hot stretch from like late December through early February. At least his numbers were just like, they were pretty absurdly efficient, I believe. But Ayo Dosunmu just does like so much. His game is just so much more comprehensive. He's not the same off the dribble guy, obviously, but defensively he can move around. They had him running, like he seemed like a better option for running point than Coby White for pretty much all of last year. So just like, what are your expectations for those two guys heading into this season?
Yeah, the Coby White thing is frustrating. He meant like that's what you mentioned, like the molten hot, and that's what Coby does. He goes a week or two where he shoots like 60% from three, and he'll have games where he hits 8 3-pointers, and it's like this guy's awesome. He's so fun to watch. And then the last half of it, one of the reasons their offense goes in the tank the last quarter last season is that Coby White was awful. He was terrible. And like in the playoffs against the Bucks, he was unplayable. He was awful. Ayo was not much better in the playoffs either, but you'll give him a little bit more of a slack as a rookie. I believe Coby, I think they might have played around the similar amount of minutes in that series, but they were both not any good. But Coby, obviously a bit more experience at this point, and the point guard stuff really did not work out for him when they gave him that starting point guard role a few years ago. They tried that experiment. I think it is clear at this point that Coby is best as a microwave gunner off the bench. The problem is just like, again, consistency. It's just not there. He goes through the stretches where he's great, and then he goes through the stretches where he just can't make anything. Like, and I think he might have been sub 30% in that Bucks series from three. I just know the back half of the back quarter last season, he was low 30s or around 30% from three, and that just can't happen. When that's like your
28% against the Bucks,
yeah,
by the way.
When that's like your NBA skill is being a high volume 3-point shooter, but you just can't do it. He's only at like 35, 36, I think, percent for his career. It's just not good enough for that, like that being his thing. He gets up a lot of threes. He's good at getting them up. He's just way too inconsistent. So, and then, I mean, just the rest of his game just hasn't really rounded out. I mentioned the point guard stuff. Defensively, he's just never going to be that good of a defender. I don't think he's just, the awareness isn't there. Like, I feel like he got a little better last year. He tried harder, but he's still just like not that strong. The awareness isn't that good. So like team defense, not great. Ayo just has way more potential as a two-way player. Defensively, he's long, he's active. We saw some of the games he had against Trae Young where he just really flustered him with his aggressiveness, and stuff like that. Still has a lot of work to do in terms of team defense. He had his share of breakdowns and all that kind of stuff, but in terms of his on-ball man-to-man defense, I mean, Ayo just miles ahead of Coby White in that regard. And then offensively, as you mentioned, like he had his moments as a point guard where he showed some really nice stuff, had some nice pick and roll rapport with Nikola Vucevic. I think Ayo has more offensive juice to his game, and scoring wise. I mean, we know how good he was in college as a scorer. He's one of the best guards in the country at Illinois. He averaged like over 20 points a game. I know some of that doesn't always mean anything, because some of that doesn't always translate, because he's not the most explosive guy, doesn't have the quickest first step, but like I think he's got enough wiggle with his dribble and his ability there. And I feel like he's almost got underrated explosiveness. I pointed this play recently on a pod where late in the game against the Pacers, he drove and dunked on like multiple guys, like to finish the game for a clutch basket, just dunked on multiple guys. And it was like, Ayo, where the heck has this been? Like, that's incredible. I didn't really know you had this kind of explosiveness in you. So clearly it's kind of in there when he has it. And I saw a stat recently as well that he was one of like the most efficient finishers on drives out of rookies.
He's
on
got
like
like some north-south oomph to him. Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's got more than like I was really expecting as an NBA player. So I think there's just way more potential there as an all-around player, kind of as you mentioned there. I would guess Ayo will play more than Coby. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see what Billy does in terms of starting over starting in place of Lonzo. Like I think there's a good argument for Io. I think there's a great argument for Caruso. I do think they'll probably also consider Dragic, but like
Is he going to play like a real role for this team? I guess then that's how it's like sounding. I guess I looked at how many guards they have, and I'm like, oh, if they're healthy, yeah. If Lonzo's injured, like Goran getting, but like if they're fully healthy, like do you expect Dragic to be like part of this rotation?
I would think not, but it seems like, I mean, there was stuff out there in the offseason where I think Dragic was like telling European newspapers that like the Bulls told me he'd be playing 20 minutes. I don't know, like because I was very surprised when they signed him. I was like, because all the stuff it seemed like he was going to go to Dallas. It's like he's got the Luka connection. They could use another maybe guard off the bench, and then it's like, oh, the Bulls signed him, which most people thought like, okay, Lonzo's going to miss time. This is some like insurance for Lonzo, but like, I mean, it seems like he might play a decent amount, and they have, like you mentioned, they have so many guards. I haven't even mentioned the rookie Dalen Terry, but I don't know how much Dalen Terry will play just because. I mean, I didn't think Io was going to play much last year, and then he ended up playing like 28 minutes a game. You never know what will happen with injuries and all that and health stuff. So like, I guess you just never know. But like, I would certainly prioritize Io minutes over Dragic. Caruso is obviously better. The Coby, like, it'll be interesting to see what they do with like Coby versus Dragic minutes because,
wow,
yeah, like
Coby White's in some danger. It sounds like,
yeah, like. I mean, Coby was in trade rumors. Like there was stuff like, oh, the Bulls are trying to like dangle Coby White in the 18th pick. But then there was other reporting out that they're like had their like asking price being like absolutely ridiculous. So it doesn't seem like there was ever anything really that serious there. So it's like if they still believe in Coby, which I'm not really sure why, but like I mean he's still young, sure, but like he just hasn't shown enough. But like if they still believe in him, like are you really going to play Dragic over him? But then again, you're in that spot where you're trying to win as many games as possible. At this point, I really don't know who's that much better between Goran Dragic and Coby White because Dragic is old. He had his moments, I guess, in the playoffs with the Nets last year, but he was a disaster. And the regular season was like a wash for him. How much does he have left? How much better can Coby White actually get? I don't know. I feel like I would rather, like in those scenarios, I'd rather take my chances with the younger guys because I'd be surprised if Dragic has like enough where it would make like where it'd be like a huge difference. And I'd rather go with the development. And if it's like all things equal, I'll go with the younger guy and hope to develop them rather than playing the old vet. But I mean, you know, NBA coaches, when there's a guy that like they think they can rely on a veteran, like I feel like they might go with him over the younger guy when they're trying to win games. So it'll be interesting to see how that backcourt rotation shakes out.
If they're going to play Dragic in front of him, like they just need to trade him because now he's going nowhere but down.
But then the problem also again is the 3-point shooting on this team. They just don't have volume 3-point shooting. So like if you trade Coby White, like you at least need to get a volume 3-point shooter back, or you sign one somewhere. It's like Dragic is an average 3-point shooter. He's always been like okay, and at this point in his career, he's not great. So like. If you're moving Coby White out of the rotation, like that takes away one of your only other volume 3-point shooters. So it's just like, where the hell is the shooting going to come from on this team?
You kind of already mentioned that you don't expect Dalen Terry to play like a real role. Is there any, like, do you have any early impressions of his game or any ways where he could actually help this team? Like he looks, me digging into him before this, it seems like he could bring some on-ball rim pressure, but if they want, I think you can make a case that they need maybe more tertiary ball handling, like outside the starting lineup. But I don't know if you're going to entrust that to a rookie. And then you mentioned the shooting. I'm not going to trust him as a shooter.
No. Yeah, I mean his jumper looks real busted. They gotta work on that. I mean he seems like a really fun player, vibes guy who at some point can bring a lot to the table with his versatility. And if he ever figures out that jump shot, like I think could be a really useful player. Like I could see him. And again, you never know with injury stuff, but like. With the current rotation right now, with Lonzo out, but if everyone else is there, like I find it hard to see him getting minutes. Just like you're just with looking at, and I think we'll probably go over this in a little bit. The rotation right now, like, and that's you're just not going to be going 12 or 13 deep, and that's probably where Dalen Terry is right now on like the depth chart. Maybe there will be times throughout a long season where you need a jolt of energy. Guys get nights off. There will be injuries where Dalen Terry will get minutes. Again, I said Io. I was not expecting Io to play much his rookie season. And then Lonzo and Caruso miss time. Zach gets hurt, and Io ends up starting like half the season and playing like 20, almost 30 minutes a game. So like, I mean, if that happens with Dalen Terry, the Bulls are probably absolutely screwed. But I would at least like to see him hopefully get a few minutes here and there. Just, I mean, it was almost kind of what we saw with Jimmy Butler his rookie season when he played like 8 minutes a game. But like, there were a few games where like it was like, hey, or Jimmy Butler, go guard Carmelo Anthony as a rookie, and like he had his like moments, and like you kind of saw early on like never thought Jimmy would be what he has become, like a top 10 NBA player. But like you like kind of saw his rookie season, like, hey, this guy like might be something. Like, you might have a decent role player here, and I think that's probably what I would like to see out of Dalen Terry, assuming he gets just kind of limited minutes this season.
So taking this roster in sum and stepping back, what is the biggest concern or weakness you have?
I mean, I've mentioned it a million times. The 3-point shooting, I think, is just going to be a major question mark. And like they have some guys, and Zach's great. We'll see if Vooch can get his numbers up. Patrick Williams we're going to need Patrick Williams to probably get up that volume to 5-6 threes a game. He is a good percentage wise. He's been great. He's over 40% for his career. Just a hesitant 3-point shooter. Going to need to see Ayo get that volume up. They're just going to need guys who haven't been that comfortable shooting a lot of threes be willing to get more up. And then just look at the rest of the rest. Like, this was why I was surprised like Derrick Jones Jr. came back. It's like I thought maybe they'd choose between him and Javonte Green, two wings forwards who are just energy guys but can't shoot worth a lick. And they brought them both back. Dalen Terry, energy guy, can't shoot worth a lick. Caruso, energy defensive guy. His shooting, not great either. So they just have a bunch of like energy guards, wings who just can't shoot worth a lick. So it's like, and with Lonzo out, and you take away that 42% on 8 attempts a game, that's why I want Zach LaVine taking 10 threes a game. I think that's gonna be a big concern. And then defensively, I guess, is also just like, will they be good enough defensively? I mean, offensively, I mean, yeah, 3-point shooting is definitely the biggest one. I think rebounding, Drummond should help with. Rebounding was an issue at times last season. I think Drummond should help there a little. And then defensively, I guess just there's going to be a lot on Caruso's shoulders and Patrick Williams, I guess, developing as well. And I mean, just internal.
Even Ayo is probably going to have
internal development with Ayo and Patrick Williams. So I think number one is definitely the 3-point shooting because they just literally did nothing to address it. And their whether it's second best or maybe even best 3-point shooter is just not going to be there for half the season. It's just going to be really interesting to see how they make up for that. And like with DeMar's mid-range heavy game, like will their offense be efficient enough without the threes and with so much mid-range? Because like they were pretty good to start the season. I think they were top half of the league. And then they were one of the worst offenses in the league kind of as the season came down the stretch. So, and the 3-point shooting or lack of it or whatever was a big part of that. So I think that's going to be something to watch all season for them for sure.
Are there any like trade targets that you like for them? Because they're a team, and this could be the question if you haven't really given thought to trade targets, which again, we haven't started the season, so it's a weird question. But they're a team because of the timeline that they're on, like there's urgency there just based on the players they have. And Lonzo's going to be out. Do you think that we should expect them to maybe like before the trade deadline, make some sort of, I don't know if the word would be wholesale, but like some pretty significant calls on the players they have to where this is a team that will be ultra aggressive as buyers this year.
Right. So yeah, so much of that depends on just how the start they get out to, obviously. And like with Lonzo out, it's like, so in terms of like buying, like it'd be hard to see them making like a huge, I mean, you never know in the NBA, like what like stars could become available and stuff like that, or things like go to crap. Like if DeAndre Ayton, like if he is not happy in Phoenix, when did he be traded? December, January? Like we saw him at media day today. He looked super thrilled to be there. Like if he's actually not happy there,
the vibes coming out of Phoenix.
Yeah, bad vibes in Phoenix for sure. Like, do they like if Ayton does one out? Like, do they go after DeAndre Ayton? I mean, I would think about it. I mean, I'd certainly he's one of the best young centers in the league. Like, I thought about it this offseason. I thought it made sense to at least see see if there was anything going on. There's like maybe him if things go bad there. I mean, I've never liked Jay Crowder, and like I would maybe at least kick the tires to see what's going on with Boss Man 99 out in Phoenix. Obviously, he wants out. Like as I mentioned, the Bulls have like no legit power forwards outside of Patrick Williams. It's Pat, Derrick Jones Jr., Javonte Green, like. Jay Crowder would be and he's another guy who at least can shoot okay. I know he's very hit or miss, and he has his moments where he's just awful from three, but like he'll get him up for sure. So like maybe they look into Jay Crowder. I mean, here like a lot of it also again the Patrick Williams stuff I think also plays into this. Like if Pat does not take the step they want, do they then become more amenable to trading him? Do they like revisit like a Harrison Barnes type thing again since he's still in Sacramento? Like. He is still in Sacramento, right? I'm not going crazy.
No, yeah,
Harrison Barnes. Okay, yeah. Because he's been in so many rumors too. So like, do they look at him again? I mean, we talked about Miles Turner already. So it's like, but
Do you
then
know
on
what's
the flip,
interesting, or I guess not interesting, or maybe it's concerning about them, and you kind of already alluded to this. They're not built to make anything other than like a blockbuster trade
yeah,
right now because of the
they
way
just don't
that
have much salary to trade.
yeah. So it's like you could throw out a name like Marcus Morris, I think would be a good fit for this roster, but it's like to get to his money, you'd probably have to include Patrick Williams or Alex Caruso or Lonzo Ball, and you're not going to do
Right.
that.
Or like Kobe's there, but like Kobe has like such little trade value right now. Like
Right.
it's like the mid-sized contracts right now are Kobe, Pat, and Caruso basically, and that's it. And like you're
Two
not
of like
trading
your three most important players are on.
you're not trading Caruso unless you're getting a star player back. Pat is a young player that they clearly really love, but like hasn't really shown much. And then like Kobe has like no trade value. So which is going back to that whole thing about like why I wanted them to use the mid-level. I'm like someone like good and valuable because then at least that's also a trade chip. But they just don't have many tradable pieces. But then on the flip side, like if things go bad to start, I am very curious to see if they would shift into sell mode and kind of do a mini blow up. Like I don't think they're going to trade Zach. Like, would they dare? I don't. I feel like trading DeMar would probably just like be a bad look. So like, I don't think they would do that this season. Maybe that'd be like a next offseason thing if things go poorly. Like I said, I don't think they'd trade Zach this year either. But like Vooch, if things go bad, like I mean, I would look to trade Vooch as an expiring contract if things aren't going well. I've already talked about Coby, and then the Pat thing is also just at the center of it. Like, if they're kind of like meandering around and Pat's just like whatever, like, do you try to put together a package for some type of superstar? I mean, I mentioned Ayton. Who knows who else becomes available? So it is just kind of a weird spot with the lack of tradable deals, with where some of these guys are in their like development tracks, and then with the veterans that they have. So I don't know. It's gonna be tough, and it'll be very fascinating to see the way this front office has operated so far has been very bizarre. It's been like super aggressive or super chill because like their first offseason, they draft Patrick Williams, they signed Garrett Temple, and that was literally like that was it. Then they have their trade deadline where they get super aggressive, trade too much for Vooch, and they also make it the other trade for that was what like Troy Brown Jr. and Daniel Tice. Then they comes the DeMar, Lonzo, Caruso offseason. Great. But then last trade deadline, nothing. You signed Tristan Thompson, who was terrible. And now this
Which
offseason,
cost you biannual too. Just
right. Yes.
Like what the fuck?
Yeah. I thought at the time that wasn't going to be a big deal. And then of course it blew up in my face because he sucked and they didn't have the biannual to use this offseason. Not that they would have used it anyways, because they're right.
Yeah, they are like, still such
bizarre. And then this offseason, they're very quiet in terms of, besides Zach, they're just a couple of small signings. So it's like they've been either super aggressive or just kind of like super lame. So like now with where they are, like with this roster, what do they do during the season now? It'll be fascinating to see.
I think also, and they're one of the teams I know when we're talking trades now, I think everyone looks to like the teams are going to suck, where it's like, hey, can we get Josh Richardson off the Spurs? Him or Jakob Poeltl, both of them would be fantastic.
Poeltl was a Bulls trade target before. I totally forgot to bring that good name drop there. And like, I mean, people were talking about like, should they trade like Coby White and the pick Coby White? I think I saw the Spurs like asking for 2 first-round picks. I'm assuming that's not going to be a thing where Jakob Poeltl goes for 2 first-round picks, but like, would he have been a better option to start at center over Vooch this year? Like, yes. I don't know. Like, he can't shoot. Again, you would lose Vooch's shooting.
That's true with DeMar. But they had like pretty good chemistry in San Antonio, Poeltl and DeMar.
Right. So like that, he would have been a very interesting option. I think still would be for sure. And the Spurs are going to be bad. They're tanking for Wemby. So yeah, that's another name that'll be interesting to keep an eye on because he was on the Bulls' radar supposedly before last trade deadline.
I think what I was actually I'm glad you like that name, but what I was actually like trying to get at is like there's going to be teams that are trying to be good or not suck that actually end up sucking. And so like maybe it's something goes wrong in Washington and Kuzma's available. I would also say that the Bulls could maybe be one of those teams that want to be good and the season ends up going off the rails. So that's why it's hard to do now. But they feel like a team that if they want to be good, there's going to need to be like a fairly significant trade made in the middle of the year. I don't want to say good, but like really good.
Yes.
Like back up towards the upper echelon of the East.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that as well.
So I know this is a difficult exercise on a podcast maybe, but what does the 10-man rotation look like when they're at full strength? And I think to make it easier, like it seems like there would be 6, I would say 7 because I love IO guys that are just locked in when it's Lonzo, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, Vucevic, Caruso, and then Io as like my 7 locks.
Yes.
Is that one accurate? And then how would you flesh out like who would be the other 3 that end up being the most played on this team?
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely accurate. And then you have to assume Drummond is a lock as your backup center. He's going to get minutes. He's 8. So then you got like you probably have to choose between Javonte and Derek Jones Jr. as like your backup.
I hope they choose Javonte, but
yeah, Javonte is like God bless Javonte for filling in for Pat last season. Like he has his weaknesses.
So much power forward too.
He is a bad. He has like no offensive skills, but he's a 6'4" power forward who just wants to dunk the crap out of the ball as much as he can. Just bundle of energy. So you probably choose between him or Derek Jones Jr. as like your 9th or 10th man. And that, have we even mentioned Coby White? And then I guess you had, and then it's either Coby or Dragic. Like
I put Coby in, but the way you were talking about Dragic, I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't.
Right. Like, I am just convinced that they told Dragic he's going to play, and like that's why he signed there. Because I just don't know otherwise why he would have signed there. I feel like he still probably thinks he can play and play minutes on a decent team.
I want to see the medicals on Zach LaVine then too. If they told him he was going to play, they had to know about Lonzo. And there's got to be something wrong with Zach LaVine. Right. I'm nervous now.
Yeah, I mean, if Dragic is playing the 20 to 25 minutes that he claimed, or I think that interview he said was like, again, the Bulls are probably absolutely screwed if that is the case. But like, I mean, in the regular season, again, you're going to have your injuries. You're going to have guys nights off. You'll go deeper in the rotation sometimes. So like the deep bench guys, you probably won't just like Bradley, Marco, Dalen Terry are probably your 3 deepest bench guys. And then it's just like nights. I mean, Dragic will have his nights where he probably won't play either, just as a veteran. Wherever he gets nights off. So did I even want 11 or 12 guys there? Because it's like Dragic or Coby, Javonte or Derek Jones Jr. And you have like 8 guys there like that I think are surely going to play every single night when healthy. But then obviously with Lonzo out, that opens up more time for those guards. But I think what we went through makes about good sense to me.
This is a lot of times matchup dependent, but for this team, it feels like when they're fully healthy, it'll be etched in stone. What's going to be their go-to crunch time unit?
So I mentioned last year how their go-to lineup was Zach, Lonzo, DeMar, Caruso, Vooch, which makes sense to me. I think it's a great mix of you got your 2 high-level scorers, you got a Vooch you can do as a third option, then you have just your 2 stud defenders, and one of those guys and one of the best 3-point shooters in the league. Just good stuff, both ends of the court. That's a great 2-way lineup. The question, of course, is where like Patrick Williams fits in all this. So like, when will there be times? Because like, if Patrick Williams is like if you're going against the Bucks or whatever, or the Lakers or the Celtics, like you probably want Patrick Williams out there to guard. I mean, I guess Lonzo and Caruso can do it too, but to guard Giannis, to guard Jason Tatum, to guard LeBron, to guard Kawhi, the Kawhis of the world. So like, that will be interesting to see. Assuming Pat does like make at least some type of improvement or leap that like so down the line when Lonzo comes back, assuming he does come back, knock on all the wood here. What if they will go to that lineup from last year, or if Pat will be the fixture there and they kind of rotate out between. I'm actually kind of curious if they go Pat at the 5 sometimes closing. They bench Vucevic, and they go with what would be Lonzo, Caruso, Pat, Zach, and DeMar. Like, I mean, that's a really fun theoretical lineup. I don't know if it can rebound well enough. If Pat gets better rebounding wise, that could really help there. So I think it's probably between like those 2 options. It's basically the first 5 I mentioned, and then Patrick Williams maybe could be matchup dependent, depending on like if they need Pat to guard like a bigger star wing or something like that. Caruso is obviously just a more impactful player, so it's like hard to sit Caruso in crunch time when he's one of your, again, 4th or 5th best players. So if you're going to bench anybody, like you're not benching Zach, you're not benching DeMar. If Lonzo's out there, he's like your best 2-way player, and Caruso is one of your 5 best. So it's like you bench Vooch for Patrick Williams, depending on the rotation or the matchup. They'll be fun to see if, and again, this all is banking on Lonzo coming back healthy.
I would 100% bench Vooch, but I've been guilty of just like devaluing rebounding ever since I've gotten into this industry. What's one weird, quirky, bonkers lineup you're hoping to see this team try this season?
See, I guess that's just like where the Pat at the 5, because they haven't done it that much. Like trying to think about like just a lineup where they just have all like just really small like wings. Like I don't have like one in particular, but if you like if with Lonzo healthy, if you threw out like Lonzo, Pat, Caruso, Io, and then I guess you need to have at least like Zach or DeMar out there for like just offense. something like that, where you just go super small and like super aggressive defensively and do stuff like that. Maybe even you work in Javante or Derrick Jones Jr. into one of those spots. And you just get like really aggressive with your defense. You really try to push the pace and do that kind of stuff. Like, I think that could be a lot of fun. I certainly do not want to see like funky lineups like Nikola Vucevic and Andre Drummond playing together. Please, none of that.
Tony Bradley at the 3.
Don't need to see. I know like big lineups are kind of coming back in vogue, but like not with the big guys that the Bulls have on their roster. Like, I don't need 3 center lineups like the Cavs were trying last year with like Tony Bradley, Andre Drummond, and Nikola Vucevic. Obviously, the Bulls would never do that, but I would love to see. Yeah, I'd love to see some experimenting with the small stuff, small, aggressive, fast, play with pace, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you basically took mine. I would have Patrick Williams at the 5, and I would have Ayo, Lonzo, Caruso, and I'm going to just throw Javante Green in there.
Yeah, sure.
Let's throw all the defensive pressure. Like, I'll just bank on the offense coming somehow organically. Like, you have Lonzo shooting and like Ayo giving you some pressure, and we both want to see Patrick Williams.
Yeah, Patrick Williams. He develops. There it is. Patrick Williams. Get him all those on-ball reps.
So, as we record this, their over-under is set at 42.5. Are you taking the over or the under on that? And where do you see them sitting as we record this inside the Eastern Conference?
Yeah. So in cash considerations that I just recorded a few hours ago with Ricky, we asked him this exact same question. He says they're around a 500 team. When we did a couple of weeks ago, when we went through the schedule, went through each individual game, this was still like guessing that Lonzo would probably miss time. Weren't sure how much. We got to 44 wins going through the individual schedule when it came out. And like I said, Ricky said like around 500. And I said, they're going to finish over 500, but I just can't see them being that much better. And the fact that I went through the schedule before and came to 44. So like that puts them right on like that 42.5 line. So like, I'm going to say over, but very barely. And I sure as hell would not bet on it, any money on it. So like, give me like 43 and 39, which puts them, like I said, I don't have like in the East, that probably puts them 9th, 10th. The East is going to be really good. It was a big theme of the Bulls media day today, was talking about how good the East is going to be. DeMar was talking about the East being like a competitive island. Billy and I think AK both brought it up. Zach brought it up. So like, they know the East is going to be, it was much better last season. It's going to be good again this season, considering even with the Celtics being whatever is going on with them and all that. And like a lot of teams made big moves. The Hawks made a big move. Yeah. Knicks, whatever you want to think about the Knicks, they got better with Jalen Brunson, even if they didn't get Mitchell. The Cavs got Mitchell. There are still a lot of other really good teams in the East. The Nets have Katie and Kyrie back, and Simmons will allegedly play. So like there's a lot of competition there. So like the Bulls, if they win 42, 43, like that probably gets them in the second play-in game, or maybe if they're lucky, the first one. So like, I feel like they're pretty firmly a play-in team realistically right now. Could they end up being a little better? There are pathways to it. If Pat is really good, if Ayo is really good, if Lonzo does come back with at least a reasonable amount of time and is like close to being his former self, they still have DeMar and Zach. Like I said, I think they're gonna have good seasons. It's just the East is just so good. There are a lot of question marks with the team. So much has to go right. I just think it's probably a reasonable expectation to be a little better than 500 and right around that those play-in scenarios. Could I also see it go really bad too? Yes, I could, unfortunately, but I'm going to try to be a little more optimistic here and think that they'll at least be playing postseason basketball. I just do not know if they'll be playing playoff basketball.
I have them under in part just because of the East. And it's like, I don't want to go into detail with it, but like, I think Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, and Philly, those are all teams that are guaranteed to be better than them. And then depending on how you feel about Brooklyn, Toronto, Cleveland, Atlanta, like it's very easy to get like the Bulls at 9th or 10th pretty quickly. So the East is going to be a bloodbath this year.
And with the Lonzo stuff, again, it's just hanging over this whole season. Like
I feel better if he was like, if they even had like kind of a concrete timetable and it wasn't, we're just going to reevaluate him in a month and a half and we'll see where he's at.
Yeah. It's just so unfortunate because he just has become so good and so important and so impactful. And just to know that he's going to miss probably the first couple months of the season and probably won't be, even if he does come back, won't be himself again until, again, like I said, I'm not expecting him to be himself until 2023. That they just might get too far behind the 8 ball. And even if he does come back, like, can they, and like the end of their schedule again this season is absolutely brutal in terms of like the degree of difficulty. So like if they fall behind the 8 ball already, and even if they do kind of rebound like middle of the season, their last stretch is just so hard. So it is just kind of hard to see them like getting up to like having like a really, really good season, getting to like 50 or so wins. Like I said, I think they can get maybe into the mid to high 40s if things go right, but a lot just has to really go right.
Is there anything I didn't ask you about this team that you think needs to be discussed before I let you out of here?
I don't think so. Like we've talked on basically everything. I guess it will be interesting to see if things go bad with like the coaching wise. Like I wonder if Billy Donovan will be on the hot seat at all. Like I don't I'm not gonna. I don't think like if the Bulls go bad, like it's gonna be on Billy Donovan. Like I feel like the roster construction is weird. They've obviously I'm not gonna complain about like some of the moves they made to get them in this position. Like getting DeMar has turned out to be great. Losing the draft pick was not great. On top of like trading what they did for Vucevic, obviously in hindsight, the Vooch trade does not look great, giving up all they did to get him. And then when you also lose the first round pick to get DeMar has been worth it. Lonzo was totally worth it, even though his injury stuff. It's just it's shaping up to be where it's just like not going to work out. Although I still like the aggressiveness they showed to build the team that they did last season for the most part. It's just like being out the assets that they are. And this weird roster construction, like I find it hard to like blame Billy Donovan, but like if the season does go bad, like I do wonder if Billy could wind up being a fall guy. So we'll be curious to see what happens there. He's got a lot of interesting decisions to make with his lineups, especially with Lonzo out, to see what he does. So besides that, I think we were pretty comprehensive here.
Jason, this was great. You gave me way too much of your time. I'm endlessly appreciative of it. Are you able to tell our listeners where they can find you and all the great work that you did, just in case they skipped the introduction?
Absolutely. So Bulls_J on Twitter, always on there. I'll be tweeting a lot more as the season picks up. For the Bulls, I mentioned Cast Considerations, a Blue Wire podcast with Ricky O'Donnell. As I mentioned, we just recorded a post-media day one, so that'll be up on our feed sometime tonight. And then Bull stuff at Forbes, SB Nation Bloggable, and then my editor at Clutch Points as well. All those good places, and I'm pretty sure I got all of them there. So that's it.
You
Thanks
are
again for having me,
everywhere,
man.
and
Yeah,
the coverage of the Bulls in particular is fantastic. So thanks so much, and I think as you know by now, I will be pestering you again in the future.
absolutely. Always love to do it, man. Thanks for having me on again.